Hey, as always, everything works perfectly up until the moment that you push the live button and then it goes offline. So, hi everybody. Hopefully you can hear me and see me okay. We are here for another episode in our live SQE1 prep sessions. Looking forward to the July 25 sitting of SQE1. So we are doing this every Tuesday, starting at 12:30, and barring any unexpected technological failures, like for instance the internet deciding to disconnect right at the moment that I press the go button, then we should be fine. I am still in the kind of under construction environments here. I thought of relocating to one of the rooms that are actually ready in this house, but then I changed my mind and I decided to stay here. So you're watching this in its full raw capacity. So this is Dr. Yanis live from the trenches. And it is not a particularly good day in London. We've got people live connecting already. I don't know where you guys are connecting from. Feel free to tell us in the chat. And also to welcome one of our new members. We've got a new member in Iglinavos Scholars that is noted there in the chat. Thank you so much for your support. If you don't know this already, you can become paying members of the channel. And for just $2.99 a month, you get access to a whole bunch of perks and things. But how are we doing? How are we managing with our preparation for SQE1 this week? Has it been a good week for you guys so far? Is it already? What is it? It is Tuesday. For some reason, I thought that it was already Wednesday. Man, I'm losing my mind here. Yes, if it was Wednesday, I would be in trouble because I'm supposed to be doing a conference on Wednesday. So yes, so imagine this, forget to go to work because I'm live streaming instead. That would have been funny. So yes, we are now into June. So we're counting down towards our July sitting of SQE1. From the people that we've got live today, anybody going for the July sitting? Tell us. Don't be shy. I would like to know if anybody's preparing for this one, and we'll we'll hold hands and cry together. Did you guys see the music video I put up yesterday? Yes, I was trying to think of like a sort of audio reminder of the content of the FLK. So I thought, let me make a song about this, like a rap song that talks about the FLK to kind of remind people what goes into FLK1 and what goes into FLK2. People are finding it funny. I'm not sure it is particularly helpful, but it's definitely funny, and it was definitely funny to make, I'll tell you that. So if you guys enjoy the kind of stupid stuff as well as the substantive stuff, do let me know. It's always great to have some comments on those videos to see how people feel about it. It's not me singing, I have to tell you this. The vast majority of it is AI. Actually, not the vast majority, the whole thing is AI, right? Everything is generated. I've been told by family members that I should not be the one personally singing on everything. You see, they're trying to suppress my creativity. So what I'm allowed to do and what is safe for me to do is to stick all this stuff in AI generation. And yes, but if anybody hears me actually trying to sing anything, they just come at me, which I think is very unfair. Hopefully this doesn't happen with you guys. So yeah, the idea was to create a series of videos that explain to people what the SQE is about. Now, in case we've got anybody new here, you guys just kind of stumbled across the live stream and you're not sure what's going on. We are here to talk about the SQE, the Solicitors Qualifying Examination, and specifically SQE1. And the interesting feature about SQE1 is that, okay, wait for this. It is supposed to test the competences of a solicitor on day one, meaning that when you start working as a solicitor, you're supposed to have certain skills and competences, and you need to demonstrate that you already have those in order to become one. So there's a bit of a problem right there, because you would think, how can you demonstrate the skills of doing something unless you've actually gotten into the process of doing it? But anyway, the SRA, the Solicitors Regulation Authority, who determined all of this thing, thought that what a new solicitor is meant to do is to demonstrate these day one competences and then gain entry. And of course, what is the best way? I mean, tell me, it's a genuine question. What is the best way to demonstrate skill and competence? Yes? Can I have some suggestions in the chat, please? What would be the best way to demonstrate solicitor-like skills and competences? The answer that the SRA came up with is a multiple choice test. And that's why the SQE is examined through a series of humongous multiple choice tests. They are split into two parts. One of it is FLK1, the functioning legal content 1, and the other one is the functioning legal content number 2. And they split the various law topics amongst those. So in FLK1, you get the nice stuff, like you get business law, company law, contract law, tort, all of these things. And in FLK2, you get the slightly more weird stuff like wills and administration of estates and property law and, conveyancing and some criminal law stuff and all the rest of it. And throughout the whole process, you've got solicitors' ethics that are examined for both parts of the FLK. And that's what I tried to demonstrate yesterday through song. So yes, I'm going to put a link down in the description so you guys can listen to my song and you can tell me what you think about it. So they thought, we need to have day one competence demonstrated from new solicitors before we even let them through the door. And how are we going to demonstrate this day one competence? We're going to make them sit a humongous multiple choice test that tests these two different categories of things. So if you register for the SQE and you're trying to sit SQE1, you will be examined on 2 different days, on FLK1 and then FLK2. And each FLK consists of 180 multiple choice questions, 180. And they split into 2 batches of 90. So effectively, you're going to have to sit through 4 batches of 90 multiple choice questions. And as if this wasn't fun enough, they've made it even funnier by giving you this task in a ridiculously short amount of time. So you've got less than 2 minutes to answer each question. Yep. So the time frame is really, really tight. Now, I've got videos explaining all this stuff. Also, you can go to the SRA website and get down all this information. But I think what we're left with is this concept that you meant to have demonstrated the sort of workers' competences before you even started the work. And you demonstrate this through multiple choice questions. And these multiple choice questions are loads spread across the entire syllabus about what one would cover in their entire law degree and then some. And you have to do all these questions in an extremely tight time frame. I know, sounds like a terrific idea, doesn't it? I know, but that's what we've got. At the same time, look, similar stuff you've got in other jurisdictions as well, yeah? I mean, in the American bar exams, for instance, you've got similar stuff. In many continental jurisdictions, you've got similar stuff. So having a sort of entry into the law profession type exam is not unusual. What is unusual is the heavy reliance on multiple choice questions. And when it comes to the questions themselves, as you've probably realized if you've been following this channel or if you're members of my newsletter and so on, they are not simple knowledge questions. They're not like, which law says this? Or am I allowed to do this in relation to this legislation? They are all scenario-based questions. So these are all questions where something complex happens, and then you get a series of 5 possible answers, and you're meant to pick one, okay? So this is the style of this multiple choice test is single best answer. And the problem with this is that the questions are all complicated and it takes ages to read them. And the answers are actually all, not all of them, but at least some of them, they're plausible. So it wouldn't be like, should this person be convicted and then, they should be given a trip to the Bahamas or, buy them a Coke or something. It's not like you get a bunch of completely random, obviously incorrect answers as options. You've got fairly legit stuff, which means you have to read not only the question extremely carefully, but you also have to read each potential answer very carefully, because there are nuances and subtleties in the potential answers themselves that are going to show which one is correct. And there's a very significant thing that you guys need to remember here that I've been telling people all along, because this is super important. You are not looking for the one correct answer amongst wrong ones. You are looking at the most plausible answer, even though you have potentially multiple ones that are correct. This bothers people. And in fact, it is something that should bother people because it is very annoying. It really actively bothers people no end. Because what this does is, it is meant to confuse you. So you're thinking, these are both correct, so why is the one slightly more correct than the other one? So the way around this is to kind of shift out of a mind frame that has you looking for one correct answer amongst the wrong ones, and think, if I'm scoring these best possible match to the worst possible match, then I've got a curve. I need to pick the one that is the best possible match, not only in terms of the substance of the law, but of course in terms of the way that it matches what the question is asking. So I feel for you guys, because this is a very challenging task. And the way to get on top of this and to get used to this, and thank you for the comment in the chat, the way to get ahead in this is to do as many questions as possible and then examine what should be the correct result. If you have, as with every exam, if you have perfect command of the substantive content, but you're not familiar with the nature of the exam, then you run a very significant risk of failure. And I want everybody to be absolutely clear in this. Even if you're perfect in your knowledge of the substance, you've gone through the totality of the syllabus, you've gone through the whole FLK, you know absolutely everything, you know things top to bottom. If you're not prepared for the multiple choice questions in the way that they appear in SQE1, you are not going to pass. So this test is not only a test of knowledge in the substantive areas and of course some skill in interpretation, but it is also a test of familiarity. The more familiar you are with the style of multiple choice questions, the more confident you are in your ability to find the single correct answer amongst a variety of plausible ones, and the more trained you are to do this at speed, then the best chance you've got of success. And I am not happy with this, right? Because what I do for a living, I'm a law academic, right? I am a lecturer in a law school, and we spend ages with our students to get them to think about the law, think about the aims, think about what the legislator was trying to achieve, think about what the courts were trying to achieve, think about issues of justice and fairness and outcome and perhaps economic efficiency at time. But we have all these discussions and we've got the time to have these discussions. Unfortunately, none of this features into the way that the SQE is examined through these multiple choice tests. So even if you were an exceptional undergraduate law student, even if you come out with a first-class degree out of uni, you will still not be prepared for this exam because the nature and the logic and everything else about this exam is very different. So this isn't meant to scare you, right? But this is to provide a little bit of context. And I want you to be semi-stressed, right? Yeah, do you feel me? I don't want you to be super chill to the extent that you don't make the investment of time to actually discover what the exam is like, and then you run the risk of failure. Also, I don't want you to be out of your minds stressed. This is an achievable task. It requires certain things, and it certainly requires time. Now, if you just joined this live stream today and you thought, maybe I should have booked in already for the July exam. Maybe this is a good time to prepare. I've got about a month to go. You're late, okay? But if you have started preparing like a few months ago and now you're ramping up your preparation and your revision in order to be ready for the July sitting, then you're going to be fine. If you haven't booked yet, I mean, the system kind of saves you from yourselves here. It's not possible to book for the exam in a hurry. You might be able to book for the next sitting of the exam in January, as we're moving into the autumn. If you're thinking about the January exam, great. You're going to have plenty of time. And if you're thinking now, which is, the middle of the year, you certainly have got a good 6-month period till we hit the January exam, which gives you the time to figure it out, prepare, be in time for all the bookings and the reservations and the payments and all of that stuff. Now, in order to help you guys along with this, I'm publishing study planners on my website that can help people with their preparation. I'm going to be launching at the end of the summer a new study planner that takes you through the totality of the FLK and suggests what you should be reading every week in order to cover the totality of the syllabus from September all the way to the January exam, right? So I'm preparing this now. I'm going to have this available a bit later on in August. So you can use this for your prep. Maybe you're familiar with my study guides already if you were preparing for this exam a little bit earlier, because we had one issued at the end of last year. All these things are free. They're all available to download from my website. I'm gonna put links down in the description for you guys to get them and have a look at what they look like before we launch the new ones. And I mentioned the newsletter before. It went out yesterday. Maybe you guys are in here because you got the newsletter with this link yesterday. The whole point of the newsletter is sort of catch-up motivational thing. So every Monday I send out the newsletter. Oh yes, so we've got one of my members that is there and saw this in the newsletter yesterday. Awesome. Thank you for joining in. So let me type the thing in the chat, right? So newsletter. I can never talk and type at the same time. Does this happen to you guys? So if you email, hopefully I spelled this correctly, newsletter@glintis.co.uk, which is my website, you will receive every Monday a newsletter that's got a multiple choice question, links to a video or some reading material, bunch of discount codes, and I'm currently negotiating with people to get you some more discount codes. So I've got at the moment some for Revise SQE that I've got really nice revision books, for law drills, which is an AI tutor for MCQ prep, and I'm trying to get some additional codes to share with you guys. And then I've got, so you had the question, you had the resources, you got discount codes, then I've got the answer to the previous week's question with a full explanation as to why the correct answers are correct and the wrong answers are wrong. So the idea is, you get this, you try the question, you get the answer next week, think about whether you did well or whether you did poorly. If you got the correct one, it's still worth reading the feedback, I think. So you need to be, it's not a matter of luck, you need to be confident as to why you selected the correct answer. If you got the wrong one, then obviously you have a little bit more work to do. So this comes every Monday, reminds you guys what to do, reminds you guys to stay engaged with the MCQs, tests kind of different areas of the FLK here and there to discover your weaknesses. Now, as it comes to the topics to prepare, I was having this discussion with a colleague yesterday. My suggestion is that you obviously navigate the totality of the FLK, because the MCQs examine everything, and unfortunately, as we said, they've got enough of them to actually test everything. So this isn't like a standard university end of year exam where you get a selection of topics, right? Here you need to know everything. But as regards preparing your time and allocating your time, you're probably gonna do better if you focus on the stuff that you're weakest at. And that's where I think you need to sort of triage your own knowledge. Do a bunch of MCQs. If you find that you get them mostly correct in business law, in contract law, in tort law, great. Park this, come back to it in the revision, but don't spend absolute ages on it. Go to the areas that you're weakest at. Go to your property law, to conveyancing, to criminal procedure, to ethics, to stuff like that. I mean, I mentioned those because I'm terrible at these, and also people tend to find those a little bit more challenging. You need to bring your knowledge level up to a stable level across all these areas. So I think it would make more sense to focus your energy on the areas that you don't like and the areas that you're not very good at, even though it is, challenging to keep yourselves motivated, rather than to devote the same amount of time. My study guide, when it comes out, you'll see prioritizes the areas that people normally have got difficulty with, but the study guide is simply a suggestion. Yeah, if you find that some of the areas that I devoted 2 weeks you already know very well, just skip those and go to the next area that you might need some more attention. But I think the main takeaway here is to remember that we need to have the same level of competence across all the areas of the FLK, because they can and they will and they do examine all the areas of the FLK. Okay, shall we do some multiple choice questions and see how we feel? Who's up? Let me open a Fanta. Give me like a thumbs up or something, or some enthusiastic comment if you guys are ready to go in for some MCQs. Lemon, nice stuff to keep you awake. Better than drinking 600 coffees a day, I say. All right. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. If I manage to find it, there we go, with some the slides of the questions. So hopefully this is switching for you guys just now. Let's see. It normally takes a second, but it tends to get there. Ta-da! Okay, cool. We're on. So let's attempt some questions and see how we feel about it. Question number 1. If I manage to click it, there we go. Right. Question number 1. The composition of the House of Lords with its mix of appointed and hereditary peers has been a subject of debate regarding democratic legitimacy. Despite efforts at reform, the fundamental character of the House of Lords has remained unchanged. Question: which significant reform measure was enacted by the House of Lords Act 1999? Was it 1, the introduction of 26 elected members to represent regional constituencies? Was it 2, the removal of the automatic right of hereditary peers to sit in the House of Lords? Was it 3, the establishment of a fully elected second chamber? Was it 4, the appointment of life peers by the monarch without the advice of the PM? Or was it 5, the expansion of the Lords to include members of the European Parliament? Let's have your votes. How are you guys on matters of British constitutional law? Yeah, I thought this would be a fun one to start with, because we don't talk about constitutional and admin law that often. So this is perhaps an opportunity. So anybody ever heard of the House of Lords Act 1999? I was a student in 1999. I was in my third year of law school. Yes. I was doing my Erasmus, actually, 1999, final year of, not final year, the year before last. And I had a great time. Guess where I went for my Erasmus? Yes, go on. I'll give you, I need to find some rewards to give you guys. I went to Greece. And you're thinking, hang on. So I was studying here at the University of Essex. And for my Erasmus, I went to Greece. And you're thinking, this guy is Greek. Why did he go back home for his Erasmus? He should have gone someplace else. The logic was that I wanted to become a lawyer in Greece. So I thought, if I use my Erasmus year to go to Athens Law School, take all the core subjects that I'm going to need for the bar exam, like the stuff we're doing here for the SQE, then I'm going to be ready for the bar exam when it comes to it, which worked and then didn't, because I did all the subjects and I did very well on the subjects. And then I decided not to sit the bar exam. But, I could do it later. Now, we got a question in the chat that is asking about international students. Let me give you the answer to this question, and then we can talk about the experience of international students for a second. So, what happened with the House of Lords Act of 1999? What is the correct answer? The correct answer is number 2. They removed the automatic right of hereditary peers to sit in the House of Lords. Because the House of Lords, as you probably know, consists of people who are appointed by the government. Usually, they tend to appoint their friends or failed politicians or donors to the House of Lords. I don't know, not my fault. But also you had the hereditary ones, the ones who inherited the title coming along from their ancestors. So the Labour government, Tony Blair at the time, wanted to deal with that because it was perceived to be undemocratic. So they no longer have the capacity, somebody who's a lord, they no longer have the capacity to pass on the title to their children to have a seat in the House of Lords. So soon, the House of Lords is going to consist entirely of failed politicians and rich guys who got appointed by their friends. There's a win for democratic legitimacy right there. So let me return to the question that we've got in the chat. The SQE as it relates to international students. It is an exceptional question, and there are a couple of things of importance. International candidates have got a huge advantage. Why? Because here we're talking about SQE1 most of the time, but SQE1 is not the totality of the exam. There is also SQE2. But if you are qualified and practicing in your jurisdiction, most likely you are exempt from SQE2. SQE2 is about all the actual lawyer skills. So what happens when you interview a client? What happens when you're present at the police station? All the fundamentals of civil and criminal procedure. How do you deal with the paperwork in a law firm? How do you deal with the account stuff? How do you deal with all sorts of interactions, both with counterparties, but also with superiors within and without the firm? So all of that is super significant in the actual practice of the law. And it is something that, to be honest, is going to be actively useful to somebody on their day one as a solicitor. And this is examined through not a multiple choice test, but through a series of written and oral exercises. So SQE2 is terrible. So if you thought that SQE1 is trouble, SQE2 is way worse, because SQE2 is the real experience of being and working as a lawyer. And it is also something that is a problem for us at law school, because we do not teach that stuff at law school. Because the actual practice of the law, what you do with the clients, what do you do with the courts, what you do with your partners, what you do with the police, and all of that was never part of what we taught in the traditional law degree. We spend all our time in theory and justice and concepts and stuff, and talking about Victorian law cases. Under the old system, when you had the legal practice course, this is where you would have a year of structured study that they would tell you all this real world lawyery stuff. But now we don't have this anymore, because they replaced that pathway with the SQE. So if you want to qualify by taking SQE1 and SQE2, you have to get on top of not only of the totality of the FLK, but you also need to get on top of all these real, actual lawyer skills. But if you're a foreign qualified lawyer, the SRA has negotiated with the local bar associations in the various jurisdictions exemptions. So that doesn't mean that you have simply passed your bar exam someplace else. It means that you need to have a practicing certificate, and depending on the jurisdiction, you must have been practicing for a certain period of time as well. Because as you probably know, in various foreign jurisdictions, there's an entry level where you cannot really do much when you're very, very newly qualified, and then you can ramp up in your audience rights. There is a sort of minimum for audience rights that you need to have achieved before you can gain the exemptions. So if you just get, let's say, if you registered at the Athens bar yesterday, it doesn't mean that you're automatically exempt from SQE2. But if you're practicing for a year or two, then you will be. So, key point for international candidates for the SQE: check the extent to which you are exempt from SQE2. A humongous headache, a humongous problem is removed if you don't have to sit SQE2. And when it comes to preparation, somebody with either a recent law degree from England and Wales or a great deal of time and desire can self-study for SQE1. So either you've done this stuff at school recently and you just need to brush up a few areas, or you got a lot of time available to you and you can actually get the material and self-prep. You can effectively self-prep for SQE1, but nobody can self-prep for SQE2. So that, I mean, we can debate if you want, and I've argued with some people over this, but I think, considering the cost of the exam and the sort of psychological effects of failure, it is so bad to fail SQE2 and have to retake it. And that's why, because it's so difficult to pass it, if you didn't have structured tuition, I would really advise getting the support of a prep school. So what is the best, thank you for the question in the chat, what is the best way to prepare for SQE2? In fact, it is to get some tuition. Either you register with a prep school that offers support for SQE2 and pick the package that's got the tutor interaction. Because you need this. It's an oral, a great bit of it is the oral exam. So you actually need the back and forth with a real person. Yeah. So either you pick one of the pricey packages from the prep schools for SQE2, or you get a tutor privately to support you. But I really would not advise going through SQE2 on your own. But if you're a foreign registered lawyer who's been working for a little bit and you qualify for the exemption, then you're safe. And there's another thing that is important for international candidates. And to be honest, the majority of the people that I'm dealing with, either through our Facebook group or through the newsletter or in these live streams, tend to be international candidates. The great thing about international candidates is that if you've already been working, then you also satisfy the qualifying work experience requirement. Because passing the SQE has got these three components, right? You need to pass SQE1, you need to pass SQE2, and then you need to have the qualifying work experience, which means that you have been working under the supervision of a solicitor for a certain period of time. If you have been working overseas, this is recognized. So if you've been supervised by a lawyer under your home jurisdiction, then this also counts. So the great benefit is, if you're an international candidate who's already a practicing lawyer, not only you don't have to sit SQE2, of course, check the SRA to be sure, but most of the time you won't have to sit SQE2, and you probably already satisfied the qualifying work experience requirement if you've been working for a long while. Yeah. So this is how the experience of international candidates tends to be a little bit different from the domestic candidates, especially the people who are straight out of law school and they're thinking about qualifying. Right, good. So hopefully this is helpful for you guys and answers your questions a little bit. If you do find all this helpful, hit the like button so YouTube also knows that you're finding this helpful. Shall we, thank you. Shall we move on to our next question? Right, let me clicky this. Okay. Right, so now we have changed. Let's see what we've got now. Jane is a director of Tech Solutions Limited. It's a company that offers IT equipment and related services to other businesses. Jane recently discovered that one of Tech Solutions' core clients, Global Corp, is looking for a new software solution. Jane also, on the side, runs her own separate software company called Innovate Incorporate. Without informing the board of Tech Solutions, Jane approaches Global Corp on behalf of her own company and secures a lucrative contract for her own company. She's confident that Tech Solutions will not have an interest in offering this sort of software to clients, so she didn't think there was anything worth discussing internally. So the question for you, which of the following statements best describes Jane's position? Is it Jane has not impacted Tech Solutions' interests by securing a contract for Innovate ENC? Is it 2, Jane has no obligation to disclose her personal dealings with Global Corp to Tech Solutions? Is it 3, Jane has breached her duty to avoid conflicts of interest? Is it 4, Jane can only be held liable if Innovate fails to deliver on the contract with Global Corp? Or is it 5, Jane is entitled to pursue business opportunities on behalf of others so long as Tech Solutions is not interested? Aha. All right, let's vote. We've got quite a few people watching us live. So what do you guys think? Would you go for number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5? And I think this actually exemplifies what I was saying before. This is the style of the questions for the SQE. A chunky scenario. Remember, you got like 1.7 minutes or something, right? So within that kind of minute and a half, or in any event less than 2 minutes, you need to go through this scenario. It takes time to read the thing. And then you need to read all those possible answers and kind of put them on this curve that I was explaining that goes, which one is potentially the most likely one, and then which one is the least likely one, and make that decision, click your selection, and move along to the second one in less than 2 minutes. So let's see. Lina in our chat is suggesting question 3, and potential answer 3, that Jane has breached her duty to avoid conflicts of interest. Okay. Last chance for everybody else to stick your vote in there. No, everybody else is too timid. Don't be afraid. This isn't the actual SQE, so nothing happens if you get it wrong. Yeah. Now, by the way, you don't have to get everything right. Okay, you just have to hit the pass rate. So the pass rate is in the region. Well, I'll explain how the grades are calculated in our next live stream, but you don't need to get everything right. So long as you get, say, 60% of the answers correct, then you've got a good chance of passing the exam. So there is some tolerance for errors. It's not obligatory that you get all the questions correct. But in fact, here, Lina is correct. Thank you for your suggestion. It is number 3. Now, what's Jane doing wrong here? First of all, this is very dodgy. Okay? Probably all of you in the context of your employment, you are aware of restrictions in working with other people. Most people have got exclusivity obligations in their contract of employment, which means that if you work for somebody, then they don't allow you to work for somebody else, either in another full-time or part-time capacity. And this doesn't have to do with you. It could be that you personally could hold 3 full-time jobs at the same time, right? Who cares? Because if it's not the sort of job that you're clocking in and you have to sit behind the desk with a manager behind you, but it's the sort of job that is dependent on outcome, it could be that you're very productive and very efficient and you produce content to satisfy 3 different employers simultaneously, right? So this is never the problem in not allowing people to do multiple stuff is never an issue of capacity for themselves. It is to protect the employer, to protect data, to protect perhaps things from leaking to competitors, and the assumption that the managers have that people are more focused if you prevent them from doing anything else, which actually is not true at all, but whatever. So we're all familiar through our own personal experience of employment restrictions in regards to what we can do with others. In the context of company law, now FLK business law contains company law, which is what this question comes under. In the context of company law, these restrictions are way worse, because if you are a company director, not only you're not supposed to work for somebody else for the business to be confident that you're spending your time primarily with them, but you have a higher duty. You have a duty of fidelity to the company that you're a director. And this goes way beyond, and it is interpreted in way broader fashion than any employment restriction. So when we're saying that Jane is a director that is on the side doing something else, this is potentially a lot more problematic than simply saying this is Jane who's an employee and has got a part-time job with somebody who does something similar. You cannot be a director for businesses that are in the same domain that they could potentially compete. The reason is that your duty of fidelity and your duty to promote the interests of your company will automatically be in conflict with the other company if the companies are in the same domain. I'm not talking about, I'm a law academic during the day and I run a restaurant in the evening, okay, because one has got nothing to do with the other. But I cannot really be a director of two restaurants at the same time, because when it comes to getting supplies, if they cannot fulfill everywhere, where would I send these supplies? When it comes to soliciting for customers, where would I send the customers? So if I'm a director in two places that are in competition with each other, every time I make a decision that is good for one business, it's automatically harming the interests of the other. So that's why Jane here is in trouble. Now, we've got another suggestion here that it could be number 2. So let's kind of pick them apart and see which one's the correct answer. The first possible answer is that Jane has not impacted Tech Solutions by securing a contract. This is wrong, right? Because the companies are working in similar enough domains. So diverting an opportunity to somebody else is by default a problem. So 1 is not the correct answer in the law. If we look at 2, that says Jane has no obligation to disclose personal dealings, then that unfortunately is also wrong. She is obligated to disclose personal dealings when there is the potential for a conflict of interest. And Jane being engaged in 2 different companies that are working in the same field raises the potential of conflict. So everything that she does in relation to her own personal company will potentially raise a conflict with her position in Tech Solutions. So both potential answer 1 and potential answer 2 are wrong. 3, it says that Jane has breached her duty to avoid conflicts of interest. Yes, that is the correct answer. Let's think about something here. What is the duty? The duty is to avoid the conflict of interest. So saying that nothing bad happened, and Jane's argument is that Tech Solutions would not be interested in providing this type of software. So no matter whether Jane took advantage of this opportunity for herself or on behalf of a third party or a third party altogether took it, it makes no difference to Tech Solutions because nothing bad happened. Okay, maybe nothing bad happened, but this isn't the question. The question, the obligation is, the duty is to avoid conflicts of interest. It's not to avoid harm to the company. It's to avoid the conflict. And there is no way around the problem that the conflict exists. If this sounds strange, I'll admit it is strange, and it takes a bit of familiarity with the rules on directors' duties and all the rest. So I've got plenty of lectures on directors' duties. I've got lectures specifically on the conflicts of interest that you can watch in the channel later on if you're finding these concepts peculiar. Now, since the obligation is to avoid the conflict, the way to avoid the conflict is either not to do the thing, not to do anything, right? Or not to be in that position to ditch the directorship of the other business, or to disclose. So Lina is correct in there. The way in which we deal with conflicts of interest is through disclosure. You disclose in advance that you're thinking about something that would raise a conflict, and you ask the company to say if they're okay with it or not. Depending on what the conflict is about, you could have the board of directors saying it's okay, or you may need to go to the shareholders for them to say that it's okay. So it's dependent on context. But the important thing is you can ask in advance. There's also a mechanism for asking subsequently after you've done something, but that is somewhat more complicated. Yeah, but look, this is our task here was just to kind of filter out the correct question, not to dive very deep into the issues of the conflict of interest for directors, because this is a big area of study. So far we said 1 is wrong, 2 is wrong, 3 is the correct one. Let's see why the rest of them are not great. So number 4 says that Jane can only be held liable if Innovate fails to deliver. Got nothing to do with the conflict, right? So this is one of these things. It's called a distractor, meaning that there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with the proposition, but what's wrong with it is that it's irrelevant to what's happening, okay? So whether Jane ends up being liable to Innovate for whatever is a totally separate issue from the conflict of interest with tech solutions. So that's why number 4 is incorrect. How about number 5? It says that Jane is entitled to pursue business opportunities on behalf of others so long as tech is not interested. No, okay? There's a great reason why this is a problem. Again, it goes back to we're interested about the presence of a conflict of interest. We're not actually talking about harm. If Tech Solutions is not interested anyway, they wouldn't suffer any harm. Well, fair enough. But we were interested about the appearance of conflict and trying to do away with this conflict. What the courts have said in similar circumstances is that you really cannot get away by saying, I assumed my company wasn't interested, or I talked to one of them and they said they're not interested. I talked to somebody in the board. You need them to formally excuse the conflict of interest. Because if, and watch this, this is funny. If this is a valuable opportunity, why are they not interested? Yeah? It is your job as a director of the company to convince them to be interested. So Jane cannot get away by saying, oh, they didn't want to do it anyway, I'll do it for myself and I'll make some money. If there is money to be made, it was her job to explain it to them and get them interested. Yeah? So more on that stuff. I'm going to put a link down in the description to the conflict of interest video. So you guys can pursue this further, but that's the sort of, the logic in which this works. Yes. So that's why, yes, thank you, Lina. And that's why I was saying earlier that when you've got feedback, you could be having feedback, say through what I send in the newsletter, or if you're looking at a book that gives you feedback, or if you're using an online tool that gets you to practice MCQs and then offers feedback on the responses. It's a great idea to look at the feedback, not only as to why the correct answer is correct, but also as to why the wrong ones are wrong. Because that helps bring out this kind of subtle differences in the phrasing and direction of the question, of the answer, that helps you determine which one is the right one and which one is the wrong one. And clearly, the more of them you do, the better you get at it. Yeah? Okie dokie, let's then switch to the next one. All right. We got Emily. Okay, let's go back here. Emily. What's happening with Emily? Emily is a freelance graphic designer. She enters into a contract with ABC Publishing to create a set of illustrations for their upcoming book. The contract stipulated that the illustrations were to be completed and delivered by the 1st of May. The payment was £5,000 upon delivery. Due to unforeseen personal issues, Emily is unable to complete the illustrations by the agreed date. ABC Publishing needs them really urgently, and they have to hire another designer. The cost of the other designer is £7,000. ABC Publishing is now seeking to recover the additional cost from Emily. Which of the following statements best describes ABC Publishing's legal position regarding this breach of contract? So is it A, the first one, ABC Publishing can recover the full £7,000 from Emily as it represents their additional cost? Is it 2, ABC Publishing can only recover £5,000 from Emily, which was the original contract price? Is it 3, ABC Publishing can recover the additional £2,000 incurred as it is the direct consequence of Emily's breach? Is it 4, ABC Publishing cannot recover any additional costs because Emily's breach was due to unforeseen personal issues? And is it 5, ABC Publishing can claim for £12,000 the combined total of the original contract price and the additional cost? Aha! So we are in the domain of breach of contract. What is the standard remedy for breach of contract? It is payment of monetary compensation that we call damages. Yeah. So this is the main way in which the courts resolve those issues. And we are now trying to figure out what the amount should be to compensate the company for Emily's breach of contract. So what do you guys think? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? I should be sponsored by Fanta. Or I shouldn't. I don't know. Am I allowed to say this? Maybe I'm not allowed to say this. So YouTube is going to take the video down. I am not sponsored by Fanta. I am sponsored by you guys, because I've got some of my channel members supporting me here in this live stream today. So thank you so much, guys. So these channel members, these are my friends who are spending $2.99 a month to support this channel and my efforts. I used to say this is the price of a coffee, but apparently now it is less than the price of a coffee. Should I up my prices? Because everywhere I go now, the coffee, I don't know what happens here. In London, the coffee, even the cheapest one you can find now seems to be like above £3. But anyway, inflation. So it's definitely not Fanta. Now, Lina is suggesting number 3. Okay. Alrighty. So what would be the best way to figure out what we're compensating people for? Yeah. Do we want to talk about whether there's a breach of contract or not? Probably not, because look, Emily had a job to do. She was to produce the illustrations. She was to do it by a specific date. The date was significant. She failed to meet that deadline. The publisher needed those illustrations because they needed to proceed with the process of publication of the book. They had to get somebody else. In the same way that you order a cab to take you to the airport, the cab doesn't come, you're going to miss your flight, you need to get another cab. Did you guys see the... Because I made a video recently, published it recently, on causation and remoteness in kind of remedy situations, and I'm using my favorite example that I've been telling my students for years. that you order a cab and the cab doesn't come, and then you miss the flight, and then you miss the business meeting, and then the wife kicks you out of the house, and then you get divorced, and then your life's ruined, and you want to sue the company for all of that stuff. So yes, so that has always been my favorite example. So I made a little video out of this. So if you guys haven't seen it, it's just there on the channel. Right. So we accept that there's a breach of contract. Now we have to assess what the loss is about. Primary method of compensation is, as we said, monetary compensation. It's called damages. How do you assess the amount? The key mechanism is called expectation loss. What does that mean? It means that you started here and you were going there when you set up the contract, right? So this was your origin, this is your destination. You never made the destination. You're not there, you're here. Why are you here? You're here because of the breach of contract. So the job of the court is to assess how much money, what's the difference between here where you are now and here where you would have been if the contract had been properly performed. So expectation loss is the key measure for assessing damages for breach of contract. Remember this. This is going to help you figure out what happened here. We started off, my video is a mirror image, so I keep getting confused which hands I'm moving. So we started off with the publishing company wanting to spend £5,000 for these illustrations. Okay. They didn't spend £5,000. How much did they spend? They spent £7,000. Okay. Where would they be if the contract had been properly performed? They would have had their illustrations and they would have spent £5,000 on it. These were the terms of the contract. What they expected to get out of the deal was to get the product that they ordered for the original price. The fact that they spent £7,000 to get where they needed to be suggests that they're £2,000 out of pocket. So they have lost, or they have spent, on account of the breach of contract, they have spent an extra £2,000. This is represented in our options here by option 3 that says ABC Publishing can recover the additional £2,000 incurred as the direct consequence of Emily's breach. This is consistent with the rules. Let's figure out why the wrong answers are wrong. It says in 1, ABC Publishing can recover the full £7,000 from Emily as it represents their additional cost. Hang on a second here. If they recover £7,000 from Emily, that suggests that they are £7,000 out of pocket, not £5,000. But had they paid Emily? I don't think they paid Emily because their contract said payment of £5,000 upon delivery. That is easy to miss. And you remember what I said at the beginning, that these complicated scenario questions hinge on small words that change what's happening. And this is a great danger for you because you're reading this quickly. Remember, you've got less than 2 minutes per question. As you're reading this quickly, you could have missed the bit that says upon delivery. Yeah, this is on the third line. This is the third line from the top, yeah? So there. You see where it says 5,000 upon delivery? This means these guys didn't actually pay Emily. So they paid £7,000 to the alternative the alternative designer, fair enough, but they have not paid Emily. If they had paid Emily in advance, they forked out the 5 and then they forked out another 7, then they would be 7,000 out of pocket. But this is not what happened. So answer 1 is wrong factually. It does not correspond to what is given in your scenario. Answer 2 says they can only recover 5,000, which was the original contract price. No. This could have happened if there was a limitation of liability clause in the contract that capped the liability. But this is not present in the facts in the way that they're presented. So this is factually incorrect on the facts of the scenario. As we said, 3 is correct because we identified £2,000 as being the amount by which they're out of pocket. 4 says ABC Publishing cannot recover any additional costs because Emily's breach was due to unforeseen personal issues. No. Okay, again, this does not match the factual scenario. What does this remind you of? Does this sound like an argument on the doctrine of frustration? I think it's meant to suggest something like this, because if a contract cannot be performed and it's not anybody's fault, then different rules apply. And this is the doctrine of frustration. I've got specific videos. I even got a great song on this. But this isn't what's happening here. Frustration is not suggested by the scenario. Unforeseen personal issues is still within somebody's control. Therefore, it would not be suitable for a discussion on frustration. So 4 is factually wrong. Well, actually, not factually wrong. It's wrong on the law. 5, it says ABC Publishing can claim 12,000 for the combined total. No, again, this is wrong because this is overcompensating them. It's giving them an amount that does not correspond to the amount of money at which they're out of pocket. So, what have we learned here? We've learned that missing one word, like a couple of words in the scenario, can ruin it. Because if you had missed this little thing, 5,000 upon delivery, you could have genuinely think that number 1 is the appropriate answer when in fact it's not. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry if that stressed you out, but I think it's better to kind of realize this stuff that's happening and kind of stress out now rather than stressing out later. Yeah. Okay. So we've got quite a few people watching us live. So I'm going to keep on going because we don't. I'm so eager to have people to kind of have a good time in those chats. I'm not going to stop while people are connected. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, global tech. Let's see, have we changed? We've changed. Awesome. So this is question 4. So Global Tech is a private company. They've recently held their annual general meeting. During the meeting, the board of directors proposed a significant amendment to the company's articles of association. The amendment would introduce stricter voting requirements for certain types of shareholder resolutions, effectively reducing the influence of minority shareholders. Jane, this time, is a minority shareholder. She's got 10% of the company's shares. She is opposed to the amendment but was outvoted by the majority shareholders. Jane now wants to challenge this amendment. Which legal mechanism would allow Jane to challenge the amendment to the company's articles of association? Is it 1, a derivative action under Section 260 of the Companies Act? Is it a petition for unfair prejudice under Section 994? Is it an application for judicial review? Is it an action for breach of the director's duties? Or is it a claim for misrepresentation? Okay. So what do we think? Derivative action, unfair prejudice, judicial review, breach of director's duties, or misrepresentation. Let's have your votes. We've got 7 people watching us live. See, who's gonna be the brave one to suggest an answer one? Okay. This is actually a very good opportunity to clear out some stuff. So Lina is suggesting number 1. What is the difference between derivative actions under 260 and unfair prejudice petitions under 994? Is everybody now kind of Googling the Companies Act? Yeah. I've got, to save you the Googling, I've got some videos on these specific issues as well. If you look at the videos on the channel that are talking about minority shareholder protection, this is where that stuff is. Okay. Who's suffering harm here? So clearly this is something messy going on, right? This isn't right. So messing with people's existing shareholdings, the value of the shareholding, the voting power of the shareholding, entitlements as to dividends and all that stuff is a bad idea. But is this messing with specific people, or is this messing with the company as a whole? I think the answer here is that it's messing with Jane. So it's messing with specific people. So it says the amendment will introduce stricter voting requirements for certain types of resolutions. It would reduce the influence of minority shareholders. Yeah. So this is a targeted intervention that is harming specific shareholders, not the entire company. So this is how you distinguish from derivative actions under 260 and unfair prejudice under 994. Derivative action is when something happens that harms the entire company. If something happens that harms specific people, then it's 994. Remember this, write this down. Have it on a post-it and stick it somewhere you can see it. Stick it on the fridge. Yes? Because like everybody gets confused about this, and after a while everybody forgets which one is which. So derivative, and I was now thinking, am I getting this wrong? No. Derivative action is when somebody connected to the company goes to court to say somebody is harming the company, an insider, right? The board of directors is doing something wrong. There's a breach of duty. There's something happening. Please stop them. So then if the court accepts this, the company assumes the suit on behalf of its interests against the people that are doing the wrong thing. Unfair prejudice, on the other hand, is the individual affected, usually minority shareholders who think these guys are out to get us, they're messing with our rights. They sue for themselves to defend their rights. This is what is going on here. So 260 is not correct because the problem was not harm to the company. Option 2 is correct because it is unfair prejudice. What about the rest of them? Well, the rest of them are wrong, right? An application for judicial review? No. This is when you complain about the behavior of public bodies. This isn't a civil, this is an administrative law remedy. It is not a civil private law remedy. So this is completely wrong. Number 4 is talking about breach of directors' duties under 172. And section 172 is about promoting the interests of the company. This isn't right here because it could be that the directors genuinely think that the minority shareholders have got too much influence, or the minority shareholders are disruptive. Therefore, reducing the powers of the minority shareholders might allow them to run the company more effectively. So it's not like they hate them for personal reasons. It could be that they genuinely think that the best way to promote the interests of the company is to marginalize the minority shareholders. Maybe illegal, but it could still make sense from a company perspective. But this isn't what the problem is here. Yeah. So we're not talking about the breach of directors' duties. We're not talking. This is not supported by the scenario in the question. So number 4 is wrong, and number 5, it's wrong. Like nothing to do with it. You could only think about misrepresentation at the original purchase of the shares if you were given the wrong information on purpose and stuff like that. But this isn't consistent with the scenario. So either the other options are wrong on the law, or they are unrelated to what's happening in the factual situation. So the correct one is number 2, petition for unfair prejudice. Yeah. Again, don't freak out if this stuff sounds unfamiliar. It's because this stuff goes into the inner bits of company law and corporate organization and corporate governance that, unless you spend a lot of time on it and unless you took company law recently, you might have difficulty with. So they're not easy concepts. It takes a bit of time to get used to it. If anybody here did company law with me? I taught company law for final year undergraduate students for a very, very, very long time. And I still do, actually. I just tend to forget that I'm still doing it, but yeah, I still do. All right, so let's go to our next question. If I manage to click the right thing. Okay, we've switcherooed onto the final question. Tom is driving his car. He's driving carefully through a residential neighborhood when he suddenly loses control of the vehicle due to a defect. He was not aware of this defect. As a result, he swerves onto the sidewalk and hits a pedestrian. Sarah, the pedestrian, has suffered significant injuries. She decides to sue Tom, seeking compensation for her injuries and medical expenses. Tom argues that he should not be held liable because the brake defect was a manufacturing fault he could not have foreseen or prevented. Which of the following principles is the most relevant in determining Tom's liability for Sarah's injuries? Is it the principle of vicarious liability? Is it the principle of strict liability? Is it the principle of the duty of care? Is it contributory negligence? Or is it res ipsa loquitur? You guys like Latin? Latin. Not many surviving Latin terms in the study of English law, but there are a few. So I'm worried I may have misspelled this. Hang on, just googling it. Yeah, and then no. Okay. So what do we think? Vicarious liability, strict liability, duty of care, contributory negligence, or this res ipsa loquitur? Da-da-da. Vote now or forever hold your peace. No votes. You guys didn't get into tort law yet? Oh, I've got a great video coming up. So I don't know if you've channel members will have seen this already, because all my new videos are immediately available to channel members, and then slowly they get released to everybody else. So if you're a channel member, these are the people who've got the star next to their name. So thank you there. You go watch the video that talks about Donoghue and Stevenson from the point of view of the snail. You guys know about Donoghue and Stevenson? It's the Victoria level case that establishes the duty of care. is the case where they found somebody was drinking a ginger beer and they found the snail in the beer, and then they wanted to sue the manufacturer and so on. And the court took the opportunity to establish the duty of care. So I made a great video where it's got me cleaning a bar and so on and talking about this, and it's got then the snail talking about their experience. Yeah, you only get that stuff here. Yes, nobody else was ambitious enough to have given a voice to the snail from Donahue and Stevenson. All right, so we've got a vote. Fossa here says number 3, the duty of care. Yes, I will agree. This is a negligence situation. Yeah. So the basis of the claim would be Sarah proving that Tom owed her a duty of care and that he breached that duty of care. Why does Tom owe Sarah a duty of care? He does because he's driving a car. So this is the situation where the duty of care is implied by law. Duty of care can arise in 2 types of situations. One is where there's a pre-existing legal requirement. So there's a legal provision that establishes the duty of care in the situation. Driving a vehicle establishes a duty of care because you are responsible to other road users and people around. If this is an ad hoc situation, something that the law does not establish a pre-existing duty of care, then a duty of care could arise from proximity, the potential to create harm, and all of that stuff. So there are specific tests. I've got a couple of nice videos on the duty of care that you guys can watch. This is easy because as a road user, as the driver of a vehicle, the law imposes a duty of care. And the problem is that because the law requires that the driver of the car is in control, the fact that he lost control due to an external event does not exclude him from liability. But in any event, before we kind of get in very deeply into this, the question isn't asking you to explain the mechanism through which the duty of care would work. It's just asking you to identify the relevant principle. So the relevant principle is absolutely the duty of care because we're talking about road use, we're talking about driving a vehicle. So what happens thereafter is something to detail in further questions. Why are the wrong answers wrong? Vicarious liability. No, that's like nothing to do with it. Vicarious liability is the concept that says that you are responsible for the actions of somebody else. Typically, employers are responsible for the actions of their employee. So if an employee does something wrong in the context of carrying out their work, then the employer will be responsible. So this is the principle of vicarious liability. The principle of strict liability, to be honest with you guys, you might be thinking that this is close enough here because strict liability implies that somebody is responsible for something regardless of whether they wanted to do it, they were negligent in doing it or not. So there are quite a lot of strict liability offenses, for instance, that's criminal law domain, but there are situations in which you're held responsible regardless of the reason why you did it. It's just like if you've done it, you're responsible to the other person. So strict liability means this. It means that you will be responsible for the outcome regardless of the reason. Now, this is close, but the reason why this isn't as good an answer as the duty of care is because we use the strict liability for criminal stuff in this context, not for the civil liability stuff. So there's a subtle difference there. Again, as I said, the questions are designed in a way to confuse. And that's why you're getting potential answers that could both potentially be correct. So I'm not going to mess with you here. Strict liability could be correct depending on the readings. Duty of care could also be correct depending on the readings of this scenario. We have to balance them, put them on this curve. Which one is the best matching, even though we've got multiple potentially correct ones? I think the best matching one by a bit is the duty of care. Now, principle of contributory negligence is something that can reduce somebody's liability if the other people were responsible to an extent about their injury. This isn't relevant on the facts here, because you see, Sarah is on the pavement. So Sarah hasn't done anything wrong. So if Sarah had ventured into the road, so if Sarah tried to cross the road, not at a pedestrian crossing, and Tom hit her because his brakes failed, he would still be responsible as a road user because he's supposed to have control of the car. Even though it wasn't his fault, he's still responsible. But the fact that she tried to cross the road at the wrong point would be contributory negligence that would reduce any compensation amounts. But this isn't what's in the factual scenario. This isn't what happened. Okay? So 4 is wrong for that reason. And res ipsa loquitur means that we can imply negligence for negligence type claims. We can imply negligence in certain types of situations. So we don't have to investigate motivation and see the rest of the evidence. Let's come up with an example. Okay? What's the easiest example? You go for some surgery, you come back, and they realize they forgot one of the scalpels inside you, or one of the sponges inside you when they were cutting you up. Like, I know this sounds gross, sorry, but this is what actually happened. So this principle would say that, forgetting the sponge inside the patient when you were kind of sewing them up implies negligence, and we don't actually care what was happening at the time. So we don't care if there was like an earthquake or a terrorist attack while the surgery was taking place. Just the mere fact that you did this implies you were negligent. Not relevant to the factual scenario. So 1, 4, and 5 are not factually relevant. 2 is not as good an answer as number 3. So the best answer here is the one that has to do with the duty of care. Again, if you guys like tort, I've got a very nice hour-long lecture explaining the key concepts of tort. Alrighty, so we have successfully reached the end of the questions. So guys, thank you so much for being here with me today. It's been awesome that we had like a nice number of people. It's great to see so many of the channel members tuning in, and it was great to have like lively interaction in the chat. So I really hope that you enjoyed this and you found this useful. And feel free to talk to each other as well while we're in here, right? It's not only about talking to me, but feel free to use the chat to talk to each other. Alternatively, if you're really keen to talk to each other, we've got the Facebook group that's available to everybody. And for channel members, we've got the specific channel member Facebook group. So it would be great to continue our discussions in there. So guys, thank you so much for turning up. It was awesome. We'll do this again next Tuesday at 12:30. So till next week, I hope you have a nice rest of the week. And it's only Tuesday. Yes. And I'll see you guys again soon. Thank you. Goodbye.